Thank you, Beth. And I'd like to welcome all of you to the Energy Information, our Energy Monitoring Tools webinar today. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you understand that you do not have to buy energy information services to continue to receive your current electricity service from Portland General Electric. PGE is one of several vendors for this type of service. And also I want you to know that the products mentioned in this presentation are used as examples. We are not endorsing any one over the other. So today we are going to talk about an energy monitoring plan. We'll talk about typical electrical bills, monthly consumption tracking. We'll talk about some tools that are available, including the Energy Tracker tool, third-party tools, and the Energy Expert tool. So let's get started. So before we do, though, what do? Can you guys use the annotation tool that Beth told us about and tell me what type of job you do today? We'll take a few moments for you to fill that out. So I see we have an energy resource manager. We have a facility manager out there. Anybody else? There's another energy resource manager. So we will definitely talk about some of the subjects or topics that you might be interested in. So to start off, we'll just talk about an energy monitoring plan, and that's really where you are trying to determine what is your strategy and what types of tools you're going to use to monitor your energy. You know, are you going to collect and track your utility bills? Are you going to use interval data? And we'll talk about that in a little more detail a little bit later. And how are you going to document those operating schedules that you have? You know, so you have to start off by coming up with the strategy. Then you have to figure out, well, how are you going to gather information? And then once you gather information, what are you going to do with it? You know, how are you going to put it together so it makes sense? It's in a format that you can look at and actually make some decisions about. So what are you going to do to evaluate? And then how are you going to use that information to compare what you did historically to what you're doing now? And then that also helps you make decisions too. Once you evaluate the data and perhaps you'll see some problems, what are you going to do to make changes in the way you're consuming energy? And of course, as anything else, is once you've done all of this, how are you going to document it to make sure that you don't repeat the same mistakes that you had before? So this is all part of an energy monitoring plan and things you have to consider when you're developing an energy monitoring plan for yourself. So probably one of the easiest things you can look at to gather information is your electrical bill. And what we're looking at right now is the front page of a typical electrical bill. Right here you can look at what the current charges are. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, and so this is essentially what you have to pay. This is what you have to write a check for. But we're going to go into just a little more detail so you can get a little better understanding about what's on the bill and what charges are there. I do want to point out a couple of things, though. If you want to impress one of the PGE customer service reps who may help you if you ever have to call in, we know who you are. If you tell us your name, you tell us the address, we can find out everything we need to know about the service that we provide. But if you want to impress them, tell them what your pod ID is. And the pod ID is also located on the bill, and it's usually right underneath the current charges, the total charges. And it says right here, the point of delivery identification, that's what the pod ID is, and that's essentially, it tells us that's where we deliver electricity to you. And it tells you what your meter number is, and it's usually some series of numbers with an AB or an AC or some two digits in front of it or behind it, you know, the numbers plus AB or the AB plus the number. and then it'll show you what the pod ID is. So if you call up and you say, hey, I have pod ID 1234567, they'll know exactly who you are, they'll know exactly where you are, and I'm sure you'll impress the CSR a little bit. But anyway, so going back, we're talking about your current charges, and on this next slide, we're breaking down what those current charges are. Now, one of the things I do want to tell you that Portland General Electric is a regulated public utility, which means that we don't haphazardly just start charging anything anywhere in any way we want to. You know, all of the charges that you see on your bill have been approved by the Oregon Public Utilities Commission. And so you may wonder, well, what's that for, what's this for, or why is that there? You know, we're not just charging you for it because we think we can charge you for it. It's charges that have been approved by the OPUC. So on this next section that we're looking at, you can see that the total charges, this is the $3,600 that was on the previous page, that can be broken down into a basic charge, and then the usage charges, and the bulk of the bill are the usage charges, and this is just your ongoing, you know, your lights are on for 3 or 4 hours, that's going to be a usage charge. You know, you're running your air conditioner for, you know, all day, that's going to be your usage charge. So that's where the bulk of the charges you can be, so that you can see that's about 80% of this bill is the usage charges. And then there's also the demand charge, and this really has to do with using equipment, you know, turning on and off equipment. It's basically with the demand. It's how much you're using in a specific finite amount of time. So it's like when you, I'm sure many of you know that when you turn on a light bulb, the most energy that you're using for the light bulb is right when you turn it on, and then it just uses a steady state amount of energy. Same with equipment, especially large motors and things like that. So we will charge you if you are using some large piece of equipment and turning it on and drawing a lot of electricity in a specific amount of time. That's what the demand charges are. So you can see that the basic charge is just the basic charge, the system charges and demand charges all add up to the total $3,600 that we saw on the previous page. But in addition to that, we also have adjustments, and I'm not going to go into all the details, and truthfully, different customers are going to have different adjustments, but there are credits and there are debits on the bill for energy efficiency, decoupling adjustments, transmission line adjustments, solar adjustments, all kinds of adjustments, and in this case, all of those adjustments add up to $5.84. The only other thing I really want to point out about that's on the bill is the multi-purpose charge. This multi-purpose charge is something that almost all PGE customers have to pay. In fact, it's something that almost all Oregon residents, regardless of whether you're a PGE customer or, let's see, or if you're down in Salem, if you paid a different provider there, it's something that the state of Oregon requires all utilities to pull out of that all utilities have to support. This public purpose charge goes to the Energy Trust of Oregon, and the Energy Trust of Oregon provides programs to residential customers, commercial customers, industrial customers that allows them to put in energy efficiency units or to run energy efficient programs that will allow the overall Oregon community to use less energy. So to fund those projects, the Energy Trust of Oregon will use this public purpose funding, and it's used, you know, all over the place. It's supporting, like I said, residential, supporting industrial, it's supporting some supporting commercial, industrial, and I think there are some funding that is done for underprivileged people in the Oregon area as well. The last thing on this slide I just want to show you is this area where you see the chart that shows you the usage over the year, and you can see for this particular customer, you see a higher amount of usage in the June, July and August time frame, which is the summer time frame, and that kind of makes sense that it's using more air conditioning during that time frame. And then less usage is being used in the January, February, and March time frame. And so this just gives you an idea of what a load shape is for this customer over an entire year. So we've looked at one place we can get information, and so now we want to look at, well, what can we do with this information? And one thing we can do is, create a tracking chart. And it can be simply done using the same billing information that you get on your bill that we just talked about. You get a copy of your utility bill. In it, you enter the kilowatt hours that are used, the kWh. You can enter the number of days in the billing period, and that is also on the bill. And you can also enter the demand charges. And so you just keep doing this month after month until you have data, enough data, where you can see what kind of trends you have. You can also try and find historical bills. And if you're able to find some of the old bills, dig through your files, find some of the older bills, then you're going to be able to create a historical pattern of how you've been using energy, which makes it much easier to find out if you're doing things better or worse than you have in the past. And here's an example of that energy just graphed out on a chart here. You can see for this customer, they started pulling data in 2007, and you can see the start is right here in 2007, the orange line. Then in 2008, the green line, you can see the usage. You can see, again, we're looking here that the usage increases in the July, August, and September time frame, and it looks like right at the end of July is when they usually peak out. And you can see the 2009 data as well in the little pink dash line here. And you can see what's happening in 2010 with the dark blue line. And then if you look at it, you can see that, well, something changed in 2010. You can see it looks like they're using much less energy. And in this particular case, this customer, they replaced an existing lighting system with a higher efficiency system sometime around in March, something like that, March 2010. And you can see by just tracking your energy usage, you can see the impact of something like higher energy efficiency lighting will do. You can see you're using much less energy, and this customer is also paying much less in energy costs as well. So you can certainly see what the impacts are just by tracking your energy on a monthly basis. Now, there are some pros and cons to doing it monthly, right? The pros is it does give you visibility, as we saw, in your overall usage, and you can show you trends over time. We had enough historical data in our previous example where we can see the impact of some energy-saving project that was put in place. The data is readily available. It's free. It's your monthly bill. It comes to you either through the email or in the mail, and you just use it. You put it in the spreadsheet. It's all right there. And you only have to do it monthly, which is kind of nice. Once a month you sit down, you put the data into the spreadsheet, you just recalculate the information that's on the spreadsheet, and you can create the graphs that you need to see. But there are some downsides to using just monthly data. Number one, it's not interval data, and actually it really is interval data because the interval is like once a month or once a pay period. But when you talk about interval data, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail, you're really usually talking about data that comes in like once a week, once a day, could be once an hour, or once every 15 minutes or so. And if you're looking at your energy usage in those smaller intervals, you can see a little bit more about what's happening with your usage. With the monthly data, you don't have that visibility into your daily usage, and unfortunately, it can take a significant amount of time to actually record that historical data if you don't have, your past bills, or let's say you just moved into the building and you don't have access to that information. So that's a potential problem. So we're going to talk about interval data. Interval data is very useful because it does have the ability to capture your energy usage in very small time slices. data can be stored, weekly, daily, hourly, or even sub-hourly. You can do it in 15-minute increments. Some people or some vendors will even offer you in 5-minute increments, or they'll say virtually real time. I will say this, that generally, the smaller the time increment that you may want to use is going to be more costly. As you can see, monthly data, monthly intervals, typically free. If you're trying to do something in real time, it's going to be much more expensive to do that. So if you use interval data, it can answer some questions that you couldn't get if you're using just monthly data. And that is like when you actually use the most energy during the day, how you can identify problems before the bill actually gets there. It provides you that ability. You can look at how your energy improvements are impacting your usage on a daily basis as opposed to on a monthly basis. And you can find out generally when something changed more accurately on using interval information than you could on just using monthly information. And you might even be able to compare weather and your energy usage, because as the weather changes, you can see on the smaller intervals, how your energy usage changes as well. So typical problems that you can identify using interval data. Certainly the early morning equipment startup, you can find out if it's starting up too soon. You can find out if your equipment is shutting down too late. You can find out if your weekend and holiday schedules are right. You can see if things are turning on when they shouldn't be turning on. You can find out when equipment is starting and stopping, depending on how you're metered out. You can really, if you have a large piece of equipment, you can really see when that thing starts up. Like when your air conditioner starts up in the morning, you can kind of see the trends, or you can see when it shuts down. You can see if controls are programmed properly. And actually, if you see no data, if you expect to see energy usage at a specific time and you don't see that, that could give you an indication that you're having an equipment failure as well. So these are all types of things that interval data, when you're looking at smaller time slices, might be able to tell you. So one of the tools, and this is a free tool that PGE offers its customers, all of residential customers and most of its commercial customers. This is small to medium-sized commercial customers. This is a tool called Energy Tracker. You access the tool by going to portlandgeneral.com/energy tracker, or there are steps or links that you can jump to get to Energy Tracker. Basically, again, it's a free tool, and it allows people to monitor their electrical usage. You can monitor data either by the month or the week, or you can actually even do it daily, so you're looking at the information hourly as well. You can also, if you notice here, there's a little line here where we're looking at the weather and comparing it to the energy usage throughout the month. In this particular case, we're looking at a monthly graph. We see the lighter bars are the weekends, the darker bars are the weekdays, and we can see the weather chart right here. Another example of a chart in Energy Tracker is looking at the daily information. And so you can look at see what your usage is hour by hour. So one very nice thing about the information that is on Energy Tracker is that this information is exportable. It's downloadable. So all you have to do is choose a view that you want, and you just hit the export data link right here, and it will download it into a CSV file that you can put into an Excel spreadsheet or whatever you desire. And not only can you get to interval data here where you're looking at electrical usage, you can also get up to 2 years of billing data as well. So you can get 13 months of meter data or interval data, and you can get up to 2 years of your monthly billing data as well. So if you're starting a spreadsheet and you want to try and get some historical data, you don't have to hunt for all the old bills. You might be able to go to Energy Tracker and just pull up that data. So the interval data here, it may or may not be in 15-minute interval data, depends on what meter you have attached to your facility. It could be hourly, it could be only daily, but I would suggest you take a look and see, check and see what kind of meter information you have and see if that's going to be useful to you if you are deciding to create an energy monitoring plan. So I have a question for everybody. How many of you have created a user profile on portlandgeneral.com? I'm seeing a lot of no's here. Oh, one yes, very good. So in order to access Energy Tracker, the first thing you do need to do is create a profile on portlandgeneral.com, and I think that that's going to pretty much answer the next question that I'm going to ask. If you have created a profile, how many of you have actually used Energy Tracker? And so most people haven't even created a profile. I noticed there was one person who had. Perhaps that one person can tell me if, or show us if they or they have not used Energy Tracker. And we do have one person who has, and most have not. So if you are interested in monitoring energy or just accessing your energy data, I'd suggest you give it a try. Go to portlandgeneral.com and log in, give yourself a profile, and look at Energy Tracker to see if it gives you the information that might be useful for you. In addition to Energy Tracker, there are several third-party tools that are out there. So most of these tools will be able to provide you with charts and graphs. All you have to do is load the information, your usually monthly data, or it could be data that's more often, has interval data, but you load your data into the tool, and then you are able to, then the tool will be able to create those graphs and charts that will show you how you're using energy. It's similar to the charts that we saw with that the Excel spreadsheet created. There are different, like we talked about, there's different costs for these services. Typically, if the service is free, it will offer you the graphs and the charting capability, but it will only analyze monthly billing data or monthly data. If it's a paid service, it will certainly provide you with graphs and charts. Generally, it will use interval data, and usually it will entail having that interval data from your meter automatically uploaded into the system that they're using, so you don't have to worry about uploading the data yourself. It's just automatic. And these types of services also provide forecasts for what your energy usage should be on a day-to-day basis, and they'll use it to compare to historical data to find out if you're doing better or worse than you have in the past. It creates those forecasts from the historical data, so wherever possible, it will pull as much historical data as possible to create a more accurate forecast for you. One of the tools, one of the third-party tools I will talk about is the Portfolio Manager. This is a free tool that is provided by the United States government. And it's two tools in one. It's a management tool and it's a metrics calculator. As a management tool, it identifies how well your building is doing, how well it's using energy, and it gives it a metric, and that's the Energy Star metric, and we'll talk about that. But it gives you an indication of how well your building is performing. If it isn't performing well, it gives you the ability to prioritize where you might make improvements for that building. It gives you an understanding of what the overall contribution of the energy cost is to your bottom line, to your total operational costs. It uses information that you input into the tool, so you can input historical information as well. So it gives you a historical perspective to see how well you did last year versus how you did this year, and it gives you that ability to understand if you're making improvements or if you're doing better or worse. It does establish a reference point and it does provide the ability for you to, reward good performance. You have multiple buildings, you have multiple superintendents for each building. You can identify which buildings are doing better, and you can, you reward good performance for the better performing buildings. And it also allows you to apply for, using the Portfolio Manager tool, it allows you to apply for Energy Star certification. And with this certification, you can kind of gauge how well you are doing with regards to other buildings of the same type. So it is a metrics calculator. It measures energy consumption, from what source. It could be electric, could be water, gas. It does it for each site. It can also normalize to the weather, and it calculates an EUI, which is an energy usage index, which is basically the amount of energy used per square foot per year, right? It also measures water consumption. It can measure water consumption. It gives you an idea of what your greenhouse gas output is. It gives you an Energy Star score, and this is where you can compare yourself to others in industries that are similar to you. And this next slide just really shows you just the different types of categories that you might be able to compare yourself to, or the other type of categories you can put yourself in, so you can compare what you're doing with other buildings of that same type, either in the area, in the same city, in the same state, or across the nation. So it gives you an idea of how well you're doing when compared to the people who are doing the same types of things that you are doing. It has warehouses, hospitals, hotels, distribution centers. There's all kinds, and this is just a short list of the different types of categories that are available for you to be measured under with using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So the types of information you need to put into the tool is fairly basic. You need to upload what, you need to tell them what your primary function is. Are you an office building, retail building, multifamily, residential? You put in your address. You can also put in, your square footage, your gross floor area, and then your use details. What are your operating hours? How many employees do you have? What type of equipment is in there? What do you have at your location? And then you also put in your monthly energy and water consumption data. All of that is put together to give you that Energy Star rating from 1 to 100. It's fairly simple to do. There's several ways of doing it. Basically, there is a prompt system where you go on site to the system and you just say, let's add a property, and it prompts you what information you need to add. Or you can upload a spreadsheet with that particular information, and it tells you what format to put the spreadsheet in. And there's also the ability to do automatic transfers, and this is primarily for utilities or other service providers who you've contracted with. I can tell you now that PGE at this point does not have the automatic transfer capability in place, but it is something that we are working on, and in the very near future that should be available to all of our customers. Talking about Portfolio Manager is extremely important at this time because of a recent change in the City of Portland requirements. There's an ordinance that was passed last year that requires owners in the City of Portland, this is owners, to track energy usage in Portfolio Manager. Right? This impacts buildings that have total area square footage greater than 20,000 square feet. Right now, for those customers who have square footage that is 50,000 square feet or above, they have to start reporting in 2016 for their 2015 usage, and in 2017 it will impact customers who have 20,000 square feet or above. For more information about this, you can go to the link that you see at the bottom. But also, if you are in the City of Portland, or if you're just interested in learning more about Portfolio Manager, we are offering several classes over the next 2 or 3 months that will go into much more detail about Energy Star Portfolio Manager and what it will take to input that information into the tool. So these are the dates that for upcoming workshops that will be available. In fact, the first one is going to be this week. If you're interested, all you need to do is register at EnergyEducationCenter.com. So my next question to the group, for those of you listening, is how do you track your energy usage? You can use the tools that Beth told you about and let us know. How do you track your energy usage now? So it looks like most of the people either are using spreadsheets and they are using their monthly bill to get to populate the information in those spreadsheets. So the last thing I want to tell you about is Energy Expert. And Energy Expert is a program that we offer here at PGE for our mid to commercial and industrial customers who want to monitor their energy. So Energy Expert is an online tool that monitors and analyzes energy usage, and it can be applied to a single meter, single facility, or an entire complex of buildings. It depends on what the makeup of what the customer is, whatever the customer's makeup is. It uses 15-minute interval data that's downloaded from the meter, usually in the middle of the night. That information is uploaded into the Energy Expert tool and then analyzed. And generally, users have access to their information, their 1 day of information that next day. So as of around noon or 1 o'clock today, you would have access to your usage information from yesterday. It puts it into a tool where the customer has the ability to analyze their energy usage in great detail. They can create charts or graphs or reports that shows them exactly how they're using energy. It shows them when things are turning on, when things are turning off, and it also provides a forecast as far as, well, what would the expected use was and whether or not the usage for that day was within the expected use parameters. Customers can also set up the system so reports are automatically sent via email, so you don't even have to go into the tool. It will send you an email and show you a chart or graph that you've set up to be sent to you. So you can just look at your email and find out how well you did the day before or the week before, or something like that. So this is just an example of a typical chart that you could use or see in Energy Expert. The one in back is just showing your usage for a specific period of time. In this case, we're looking at the month of July. And in this example, there are 5 buildings, Building 5 and Building 1, 3, 4, and 2. We can see Building 2 has no usage, so that building is shut down. But we can see for the month of July in last year, we used approximately 3 million kilowatt hours of energy in Building 5. And you can see how it compares to Building 1, Building 3, and Building 4. The other chart that we're looking at is just another view. It shows you that same period of time, or the first part of the month of July, but here we're looking at a daily usage. And there are figures of merit that are shown here. The green check essentially says that we were within, this building was within the forecast. The red exclamation point shows that, well, on this particular day, the building was higher than what was forecasted. And then the blue bar shows you that the energy usage was less than what was forecasted. And our next chart gives you an idea of what that means. In this particular case, we're looking at a single day. And we can see that in the red area here, or in the early part of the day, there's a little red. which indicates, well, maybe we started a little too soon. The gray bar that you see around on the chart is really the forecast. And so this is what the expected usage was going to be. And we can see at the end of the day, it might have cut off a little bit too late. And perhaps, and for this particular instance, maybe there was a problem with the work schedule. Maybe the work schedule started earlier than expected and ended later than expected. That's a possibility. This could potentially be expected behavior. It's certainly outside of the forecast, but maybe the day before, we decided to run an extra long shift, and so that will explain it. So it's not like something bad has happened, but essentially it gives you an indication that it's something is happening outside of the norm, so you can ask those questions. What really did happen? Was it supposed to happen that way? And do I need to do anything to make it not happen again? This next example is a chart that looks at the usage over a full month. And this is just one of our buildings, and we can see that there's a pattern here. You can notice an unusual pattern. Every 3 weeks, we see some sort of unusual pattern outside of what's normal. On the weekends, so on Sundays and Saturdays, something kind of weird is going on. So once you see the top-level view, you can drill down and look at just one weekend and see, well, yeah, there is expected activity on the Sunday, but it's taking much longer than it should. And then that same activity is happening on a Saturday. And you have to ask the questions, is this planned? Is this unplanned? What's going on? So what monitoring will do and what a tool like this will do, it won't tell you what the problems are, but it will tell you where the problems could be. So these next few charts are just showing you some of the typical load shapes that you would see for the different types of stores or commercial properties that are out there. Here's a grocery store, and we can see early in the morning we're using much more energy than what the expected usage should be. This is just an administrative office, and this is what you would expect for a typical load shape. We expect the air conditioning to turn on at about 3 or 4, maybe about 3 or 4 in the morning, and then start shutting down at about 5 or 6 at night. This next example is a food processing plant, and you see that for food processing there's a lot of refrigeration perhaps going on here, and so we expect a fairly level load shape, although right around 6 o'clock we expected to see some sort of dip, and we didn't. Perhaps that was a scheduled dip, or excuse me, a scheduled maintenance, or some sort of schedule where we did not drop the energy where we were supposed to. That's a possibility. Here's a manufacturing plant, and certainly it looks very similar to the admin building that we saw, but the wave shape, it happens a little bit earlier. The load shape, we start pulling in load about 4 or 5 in the morning, and then we start reducing the load probably about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, which is shifted a little bit earlier than the typical admin building that we were looking at before. And finally, an industrial site. This is an example of an industrial site where it looks like about every 12 hours, this is 3 in the morning, so this is right about 4 in the morning over here, and about 4 in the afternoon, looks like there could be some sort of shift change or something like that where equipment is shut down for a short period of time and then brought back up. So in summary, when you're creating an overall monitoring plan, you have to ask yourself, well, what do I really want to look at? Do I want to look at monthly data, hourly data, daily data? So what information will be important for you to look at so you can make decisions about how you're using energy? And then once you make that decision, then you have to decide, well, where am I going to get that data? Am I going to get it from Energy Tracker? Do I want to get it from my monthly bills? And then once you've gathered all that data, you have to decide, well, how am I going to look at it? Do I want to put it in a spreadsheet? Do I want to use a third-party tool? Do I want to use something like Energy Expert? So understanding how you pull it all together to make it easy for you to make the comparisons between what you did last year versus what you're doing this year. If you have an energy project that you put in place, how are you going to be able to find out if you're actually getting some benefit from that energy project? So you have to understand, how you're going to look at that data. And once you're looking at it, you have to compare it to make sure if you're making the right decisions. Do I need to change how my air conditioner cycles on and off during the day? Do I have to change how I use equipment during the day? Or do I actually need this one piece of equipment all the time, or can I shut it down for part of the time in my process? Ask yourselves those questions and make those decisions. And of course, you want to try and document those decisions that you make today, so you don't have to try and rethink them and remake them tomorrow. So that is, excuse me. Yeah, so we do have additional resources available for you. You can go to portlandgeneralelectric.com. If you want to learn more about Energy Tracker, you just go to portlandgeneral.com/energy-tracker. To learn more about Energy Expert, it's portlandgeneral.com/energy-expert. To learn more about Energy Star Portfolio Manager, I'm not going to try and say the link there, but you will get a copy of this presentation. You can see what the link is there, and you copy and paste it into your browser, and that'll get you to give you more information about Portfolio Manager. And if you are interested in learning more about PGE's Energy Information Services, feel free to contact me. That is my number, or you can send an email to eis@pgn.com. And PGE and the Energy Trust provide free energy efficiency consultations to assist businesses in identifying savings and opportunities by phone, or they'll even come to your site. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can visit portlandgeneral.com or contact Paula Conway, and her number is there. So at this time, I'd like to return control of this presentation to our host, Beth.
Thank you, Gregory. And before we proceed to the question and answer portion of the webinar, I'd like to remind each of you that you can continue to submit questions to me, and I will ask them of Gregory. And Gregory, it looks like our first question is, what is the most popular tool for energy tracking or monitoring?
Probably the most popular...
Excuse me, most popular third-party tool, sorry.
Third-party tool. Probably the most popular third-party tool would be Portfolio Manager. It is a free tool. It's offered by the Energy Star program. It provides customers with a lot of information about how they are using their energy. It allows it to compare their usage to companies that are doing the same type of work, in the same city, in the same state, and in the same country. So it's used quite a bit, and a number of states, cities across the country are starting to require their customers, or their customers to use Portfolio Manager to manage their energy usage.
Thank you, Gregory. And the next question is, what is the cost for Energy Expert?
Energy Expert has a per meter fee. It costs $70 per month per meter in order to use Energy Expert. There is a setup fee depending on how many meters you have. The first meter is $350. Each additional meter is $150. And if you have more than 5 meters, the monthly fee goes down to $65. If you have more than 10 meters, it goes down to $60, on up to where it's only $40 per meter if you have up to over 50 meters.
Thank you. And let's see, our next question, can I download energy consumption data from PGE's website?
Yes, you can. Using Energy Tracker, you can download your billing information and up to 13 months of your consumption information.
Okay. And next question is, what rules of thumb can I use when looking at my energy consumption information to help me determine if I need to make some changes?
Well, if you have historical data, you want to make sure that, if you haven't put in any new energy efficiency projects or anything like that, you want to make sure that your consumption does not vary from your historical usage. If you see a big spike in January that's way above what happened last year in January and the year before in January, then you know that there is a problem. There could be a potential problem. If you haven't made any major changes to your facility, then there could be a problem, and so at that point I would say that you need to look and see why you are using more energy than you have in the past.
Thank you, Gregory. And next question, how does a third party get access to our accounts?
So in order to get access for our accounts, the third party would have to get permission from you, the customer, to get that access. And there are forms that we have that we would send to you or the third party and have you sign them. You would have to sign them. And you would have to designate the third party as the entity that is approved to receive your data or your information. So it can be done. It's just a form that has to be filled out.
Great. And I think this is our last question. How does Energy Expert help with benchmarking?
So with benchmarking, Energy Expert uses historical data and uses as much historical data that's available from our PG data sources, and it uses that information to create a benchmark about how energy has been used in the past. And with that, you can make comparisons about how you're using energy today. Now, with Energy Expert, you have the ability to choose what specific time frame you want to use as your benchmark. If there was a time, like say back in 2013, where you had not implemented any changes whatsoever, so no energy efficiency projects, but then you have a 3-year program where you are introducing multiple projects over that 3-year period, and you always want to measure yourself against that 2013 when there were no projects, you have the ability to do that. You can set 2013 as your benchmark, as your baseline, and then always continually measure your improvements against that baseline. And then when you're done, you can adjust that baseline again and start the whole process over again when you're done in 2016 and use that as your new baseline.
Thank you, Gregory. And thank you all for joining us. That was our last question.